I was standing in my garage on a Tuesday morning in October, sorting through a box of old Christmas ornaments, when I realized I could not remember the last time my daughter had called me Dad. It was a small thing, a tiny crack in the surface of everything I thought was solid. But once you see a crack, you cannot unsee it, and the whole structure of your life starts to feel like it is made of glass. I put down the tinsel and sat on my workbench. The air smelled like sawdust and motor oil. My truck was parked outside with a flat tire I had been meaning to fix for 3 weeks. I was 71 years old, and I had spent the last 46 years building a life that was supposed to be unshakable. A good marriage, 2 children who grew up in a house with a yard and a dog, a retirement account I had fed like a third child, a home I owned free and clear. And now I was sitting in my garage, trying to remember the sound of my own daughter's voice, saying my name with love instead of obligation. My name is Frank. I am 71 years old. I live in a suburb outside of Cleveland in a ranch-style house with a white fence that needs painting and a lawn that I still mow myself, even though my back screams about it for 3 days afterward. I was a machinist for 37 years. I worked nights for most of them. I missed birthday parties and school plays and parent-teacher conferences because I was running a lathe in a building that smelled like coolant and metal shavings, so my wife could stay home with the kids, and my son could have new cleats for soccer, and my daughter could have the pink bedroom she wanted with the canopy bed from the catalog. I did that. I chose that. I would do it again because I loved them. I loved them in that bone-deep way that fathers have, where you do not think about it, you just do it. You give, you provide, you protect. And somewhere along the way, you start to believe that love is a transaction that always pays out in the end. You put in the work, and you get back loyalty and respect, and a seat at the head of the table on Thanksgiving. That is what I believed. That was the lie I carried around like a good luck charm for half a century. My wife's name is Diane. We met in 1978 at a drive-in movie theater. She was working the concession stand, and I was a stupid kid with a mustache and a Camaro I had no business owning. She had long brown hair and a smile that made my chest hurt. I asked her out 3 times before she said yes, and I remember the way she looked at me that first night, like I was something special, like I was a man who could give her a life. And I did. I gave her everything I had. I gave her the house and the kids and the vacations to the lake and the new kitchen cabinets she wanted in 1995 and the second car and the grandkids and the security of never having to worry about money because I was a stubborn bastard who never called in sick and never complained and never stopped working, even when my hands started to ache and my eyes started to blur. I gave her 46 years of my life. I gave her the best version of myself. And somewhere along the way, she stopped looking at me like I was something special and started looking at me like I was furniture, something that was just there, something she expected to always be there, something she could lean on while she looked elsewhere. I am not a perfect man, I know that. I was not the most present father. I was tired a lot. I was short-tempered sometimes. I drank too much beer on the weekends, and I fell asleep in my recliner during movies, and I could not remember the names of my kids' friends or their teachers or the pediatrician we took them to for 15 years. I was absent in a way that I did not understand until I was already old, and the damage was already done. But I never cheated. I never hit anyone. I never gambled away our savings or came home drunk and mean. I was just a tired working man trying to keep the roof from caving in, and I thought that was enough. I thought love was about showing up every day and doing the work and not asking for applause. I thought my family saw that. I thought they appreciated it. I was wrong. The first time I noticed something wrong was at my grandson's 7th birthday party. That was 2 years ago. I remember because I bought him a remote-control truck that cost $87, and I wrapped it myself with the cheap wrapping paper from the drugstore because Diane said I was not good at wrapping and she did not want me to embarrass her in front of her sister. I brought the truck to the party at my son's house. He has a big house in a development with a pool and a 3-car garage. He is a financial advisor. He makes more money in a month than I made in a year at the machine shop. I am proud of him. I am proud of both my kids. They are successful and educated and they have nice things, and I did that. I gave them the foundation. I paid for the college. I co-signed the loans. I gave them the launch pad and they took off, and I never asked for anything back. I never asked for a single thing. So I walked into the party with the truck under my arm, and I saw my daughter-in-law, Jennifer, standing by the kitchen island with her phone pressed to her ear. She was whispering. Her face was tight. When she saw me, she smiled, but it was a muscle memory smile. It did not reach her eyes. She said, "Hi, Frank, the kids are in the backyard." Then she turned away and went back to her whisper. I thought nothing of it. People get stressed hosting parties. I am not a suspicious man. I have never been suspicious. I trust people. I trust my family. That is my flaw. That is the crack in my foundation. I trust too much, and I see what I want to see, and I ignore what I do not want to see. Because facing the truth would require admitting that the people you love might not love you back the same way. I went to the backyard. My grandson, Tommy, saw me and ran over and hugged my legs. He is a good kid. He has his mother's eyes and his father's stubbornness. He called me Grandpa, and I felt that warmth in my chest that only grandchildren can give you. That pure, uncomplicated love that does not know about money or resentment or the weight of years. I gave him the truck, and he ripped it open right there on the grass, and he was so happy. He ran around the yard with it, crashing into chairs and tree roots. I sat down in a plastic lawn chair and watched him, and for a moment, everything felt right. My son came over and sat next to me. He was holding a beer, and he looked tired. He looked like I looked at that age, worn down, running on fumes. I put my hand on his shoulder, and I said, "You're doing a good job, son." He nodded, but he did not look at me. He stared at the pool, and he said, "Thanks, Dad." That was the first time I noticed the distance. He used to look at me. He used to meet my eyes when we talked. But that day, he stared at the water like he was looking for something that was not there. And I ignored it. I told myself he was tired. I told myself he had a lot on his mind with work and the kids and the mortgage. I told myself I was being too sensitive. Old men get sensitive. They start reading too much into things. They start feeling sorry for themselves. I did not want to be that old man. So I pushed it down, and I watched Tommy play with the truck, and I drank a soda, and I smiled, and I pretended everything was fine. The second time I noticed something wrong was at Thanksgiving that same year. We were at my house. Diane cooked the turkey. I carved it at the table like I always did. My sister Ellen was there with her husband Bob. My daughter Sarah was there with her husband Mark and their 2 kids. My son was there with Jennifer and Tommy. It was a full house, the way it should be, the way I always imagined it would be when I was a young man working nights and dreaming of a future where my family would gather around me and I would be the patriarch, the old man at the head of the table, the one everyone looked to for a blessing before they ate. I carved the turkey and I made the toast and I talked about how grateful I was for all of them. I got a little emotional. I always do on Thanksgiving. I am not ashamed of that. I am a man who feels things, even if I was not always good at showing it. After dinner, I went to the kitchen to get more gravy. The kitchen is small. Diane always complained about it. She wanted to remodel it for years, but I said we could not afford it, and she dropped it. That was another thing I missed. She used to fight me on things. She used to push back. But around that time, she stopped pushing. She just gave up. And I thought she had finally accepted the way things were. I thought she was at peace. I was an idiot. I walked into the kitchen and Diane was at the sink washing dishes. She had her back to me. She did not hear me come in. She was whispering on her phone. I stopped. I did not mean to eavesdrop. I just stopped because something about her voice sounded different, softer, more intimate. She was not talking the way she talked to me. She was talking the way she talked when we first met, quiet and warm and full of hope. She said, "I miss you too." She said, "I wish you were here." Then she heard me come in, and she spun around, and the phone disappeared into her apron pocket so fast it was almost a magic trick. She smiled at me. She said, "Oh, Frank, I was just talking to my sister. You need more gravy? I looked at her face, and I saw a flicker of something. Guilt. Fear. Then it was gone, and she was just Diane again. My wife. The mother of my children. The woman I had slept next to for 43 years. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself that old men get jealous and insecure, and they ruin good things by looking for shadows. I took the gravy, and I went back to the table, and I ate my dinner, and I never asked her about that phone call. I never asked because I was afraid of the answer. And that fear is what destroyed me. Not her betrayal, my own cowardice. My own refusal to see the truth, because seeing the truth would have meant my whole life was a lie. The third time I noticed something wrong was the following spring. My daughter, Sarah, called me. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon when I was in the backyard raking leaves. She said, "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." I sat down on the patio steps. I knew something was coming. I could feel it in my gut. She told me she and Mark were having financial trouble. She told me they needed help with the mortgage. Just a temporary loan, just until Mark's bonus came through. They needed $12,000. I had the money. I had saved it for a rainy day. I said, "Okay." I said I would wire it to her account that afternoon. She said, "Thank you, Dad. I love you." I said, "I love you too, baby girl." And I meant it. I meant it with every broken down, tired bone in my body. I wired the money, and I told Diane about it that night at dinner. She did not look surprised. She did not look worried. She looked relieved. She looked like she had been waiting for me to do exactly what I did. She said, "That's good, Frank. They need help. We have to help our family." I agreed. Of course I agreed. That is what family does. They help each other. They sacrifice for each other. They give, and they never ask what they are getting in return, because the return is supposed to be love. The return is supposed to be loyalty. The return is supposed to be a place at the table when you were old and broken and you cannot give anymore. That was the first time they took money from me. It was not the last. Over the next year and a half, I gave my daughter and her husband nearly $35,000. I gave my son $10,000 when he said he needed to replace the roof on his house. I gave my wife's sister Carol $3,000 when she said she had a medical emergency. I gave and I gave and I gave, because I was the father. I was the provider. That was my role. That was my identity. I did not know that I was being milked like a cow. I did not know that every dollar I handed over was another nail in my coffin. I did not know that they were not taking my money to survive. They were taking my money because they believed they deserved it. They believed I owed it to them. They believed I was a walking ATM, and once I was empty, they would have no more use for me. The final betrayal started on a Saturday morning in July. I remember the date because it was the day after my granddaughter Lily's 3rd birthday. We had a small party for her at a park near my son's house. I grilled hot dogs, and I pushed her on the swings, and I took pictures on my old phone that I barely know how to use. I was happy that day. I was genuinely happy. My whole family was there, and the sun was out, and the kids were laughing, and Diane was holding my hand at one point. She held my hand, and she squeezed it, and she looked at me with something that looked like love. I thought we were okay. I thought all my worrying was just old man nonsense. I thought my family loved me, and the money did not matter, because love was not a transaction. I was a fool. A happy, smiling fool who had no idea that the people he trusted most were already digging his grave. The next morning I woke up early. I always wake up early. It is a habit from the factory years. I made coffee, and I sat in my recliner, and I read the newspaper. Diane was still asleep. The house was quiet. I finished the sports section, and I went to the kitchen to get another cup of coffee, and I saw Diane's phone on the counter. She had left it there. She never left it there. She was always glued to that thing. But that morning she left it, and the screen was lit up with a notification. A text message from someone named Marcus. I did not know a Marcus. I did not think Diane knew a Marcus. The message was short, and it was intimate in a way that made my stomach drop. It said, "Last night was perfect. I cannot stop thinking about you." I picked up the phone. I should not have picked it up. I should have put it down and walked away and pretended I never saw it. But I picked it up and I opened the thread and I read the messages. All of them. Months of messages. Years of messages. Messages that went back further than I could have ever imagined. They were talking about meeting at hotels. They were talking about my house. They were talking about me. He called me the old man. She called me the provider. They talked about how much longer they had to wait, how much longer until I was gone. He asked her if she had checked the will. She said not yet, but she would find a way. He asked her if I suspected anything. She said no. She said I was too trusting. She said I was too blind. She said I would never see it coming. I read it all. I stood in my kitchen in my bathrobe with my coffee getting cold, and I read every single message. And the world did not just crack, it shattered. It fell apart like a broken window. Everything I believed about my life, my marriage, my family, my purpose was a lie. The woman I had loved for 46 years was waiting for me to die. She was waiting for me to die so she could take my house and my money and my pension and run off with some man named Marcus, who was younger and stronger and probably had a full head of hair. She was not my wife. She was my executor. She was the person I trusted with my life, and she was planning my death like it was a business arrangement. I did not confront her that morning. I was too broken to confront her. I put the phone back on the counter, and I walked out to my garage, and I sat in my truck, and I cried. I cried for the first time in years. I cried like a child. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes were swollen, and I could not breathe. I kept thinking about our wedding day.
I kept thinking about the look on her face when she walked down the aisle. I kept thinking about the birth of our children and the first house we bought and the vacations and the anniversaries and the quiet nights on the couch watching television. I kept thinking about all of it, and I could not understand how any of it was real. How could she look at me for 46 years and fake it? How could she laugh at my jokes and hold my hand and make love to me and plan to throw me away at the same time? How could anyone do that? How could anyone be that cruel? I finally went back inside. Diane was awake. She was making toast. She looked at me and asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. I said I had a headache. I said I was going to take a walk. I left the house and I walked for hours. I walked through my neighborhood and I walked past the houses of people I had known for 30 years. I walked past the school where my kids went to elementary school. I walked past the park where I taught my son to ride a bike. I walked past the old diner where I used to take my daughter for milkshakes after her softball games. I walked through my own history, and I felt like a ghost haunting places that had already been erased. None of it was real. None of it meant anything. The love I had felt was one-sided. The family I had built was built on sand. And when the tide came in, it all washed away. I came home and Diane was on the phone. She was whispering again.
She saw me, and she hung up, and she said it was her sister. I believed her. I was so broken that I believed her even though I knew it was a lie. I just wanted to believe. I wanted to hold on to the last shred of hope that my life had not been a complete waste. That is how desperate I was. I was willing to live with the doubt. I was willing to pretend I had not seen the messages. I was willing to swallow the poison and smile and act like everything was fine, because facing the truth meant losing everything, and I was not strong enough to lose everything. Not yet. But the truth does not wait for you to be ready. The truth has no patience. The truth arrives like a hurricane, and it does not care if your roof is bolted down or your windows are boarded up. It just comes, and it takes everything. The next month, my daughter and her husband came over for dinner. It was a normal dinner. Diane made lasagna. My son and Jennifer were there too. The whole family, the whole crew. They all came together like it was a celebration. And I sat at my own table, and I looked at their faces, and I realized I was looking at strangers. They were all in on it. Every single one of them. They all knew about Marcus. They all knew about the plan. They all knew that I was a dead man walking, and they were just waiting for the funeral so they could collect their inheritance. I saw it in the way they looked at each other. I saw it in the way they whispered when they thought I could not hear.
I saw it in the way my son avoided my eyes, and my daughter only spoke to me when she needed something, and my wife looked at me like I was a burden she was tired of carrying. After dinner, I went to the bathroom, and I stood in front of the mirror, and I looked at myself. I looked at my gray hair and my tired eyes, and the lines on my face that told the story of a hard life. I was old. I was used up. I had given everything I had to these people, and they were waiting for me to die. They were not my family. They were vultures, and I was the carcass they were circling. I walked back to the living room, and they were all laughing. They were laughing at something on Jennifer's phone. They looked up when I walked in, and the laughter stopped. They looked at me like I was an interruption, like I was intruding on their private moment. I sat down in my recliner, and I did not say anything. I just sat there and listened to them talk about vacations and houses and investments and grandkids. They talked about the future. They talked about what they were going to do with the money. They talked about selling my house. My son said it would be too much for me to maintain. My daughter agreed. Diane nodded. She said Frank is getting older. He cannot take care of this place anymore. We need to think about moving him into something more manageable. They said manageable. They meant a nursing home.
They meant a room with yellow lights and the smell of medicine and a television that only gets 3 channels. They meant a place where they could put me out of sight and out of mind, while they sold everything I had worked for and split the proceeds like pirates dividing treasure. I did not say anything. I sat there and I listened, and I felt something inside me die. Not with a bang, with a quiet whimper. The last piece of hope that I had been holding on to finally gave out. I was not a father to them. I was not a husband. I was not a man. I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed, and they were all in on it, every single one of them. The next morning, I hired a lawyer. Her name is Sandra. She is a shark. She is the kind of lawyer who takes no prisoners, and she looked at me across her desk with a face that said she had seen this 100 times before. She asked me what I wanted. I said I wanted to protect myself. She asked me if I had proof. I told her about the phone. I told her about the messages. She asked me if I had screenshots. I said no. She told me to get them. She told me to get copies of everything. She told me to document every dollar I had given my children. She told me to lock down my bank accounts and my pension and my house deed. She told me to prepare for war. I told her I did not want a war. I just wanted my family back. She looked at me with pity, and she said, "Frank, they are not coming back. They were never yours. You were just their source."
And now that they have drained you, they are moving on to the next stage of their plan. I went home and I found Diane's phone again. She had left it charging in the kitchen. I took screenshots of every message. I took pictures of the conversations. I took copies of everything. I felt like a spy in my own house. I felt like a traitor. But I was not the traitor. They were the traitors. They had betrayed me in the worst way possible. Not with violence, with slow, methodical, emotional, and financial destruction. They had used me up, and now they were throwing me away. I confronted Diane that night. I sat her down in the living room, and I told her I knew about Marcus. I told her I knew about the plan. I told her I knew everything. Her face did the thing I did not expect. It did not crumble. It did not apologize. It hardened. She looked at me like I was nothing. She said, "You were never going to find out. You were supposed to be dead by now." She said it with such coldness that I felt like she had punched me in the chest. She said, "I have been unhappy for years." She said, "I stayed for the money." She said, "I stayed for the security." She said, "I never loved you, Frank, not the way you loved me. I loved what you gave me. I loved the house and the car and the credit cards, but I never loved you." I asked her about the kids. I asked her if they knew. She said, of course they knew. She said they had known for years. She said they were on her side. She said they saw how I treated her.
She said they saw how I was absent and cold and distant. She said they saw how I never really cared about their lives. She rewrote history. She turned me into the villain. She made me the monster. And the worst part is, my children believed her. They chose her. They always chose her. I was just the paycheck. I was just the old man who worked nights and fell asleep in his recliner. I was never their father. I was never their hero. I was just the guy who paid the bills. I kicked her out that night. I told her to leave. She did not fight me. She packed a bag and she called Marcus, and he came to pick her up in a black SUV. I watched her walk out the door. I watched her get into his car. I watched her drive away. She did not look back. She did not even look back. That was the moment I knew. The love was never real. It was always a transaction, and I had just been overcharged. The next few months were a nightmare. Diane filed for divorce. She came after my house. She came after my pension. She came after everything. My children testified against me in court. They said I was abusive. They said I was negligent. They said I was a drunk. They lied. They lied under oath. They looked at me with cold eyes, and they told the judge that I was a terrible father and a terrible husband, and that I did not deserve a single penny of what I had earned. The judge did not believe them entirely, but he gave Diane half of everything. She walked away with $600,000 and a man who was 15 years younger than me. She walked away smiling. My children walked away with nothing from me because I changed my will. I disinherited all of them. I gave my entire estate to a charity for sick children. I made sure they would never see a dime. That was my one victory. That was my one act of defiance. They were not going to get my money. They were not going to get the satisfaction of waiting me out. But victory felt hollow. It felt like winning a war that had already destroyed the country. I lost my wife. I lost my children. I lost my grandchildren. My son stopped bringing Tommy over. My daughter stopped answering my calls. I have not seen Lily since her 3rd birthday party. I do not even know if she remembers me. I am a stranger to them. I am a ghost. I am the old man who used to be their grandfather, but is now just a cautionary tale they tell at dinner parties. Their mother made sure of that. She turned them against me. She made me the villain. And they believed her because they wanted to believe her, because believing her meant they did not have to feel guilty about what they did. They did not have to feel guilty about stealing from me and abandoning me and leaving me alone to die. They could just tell themselves I was a bad man and they were the victims, and everything they did was justified. I live alone now. I still live in the same house. It was my house. I fought for it, and I kept it.
But it does not feel like a home anymore. It feels like a museum.
a museum of a life that never really existed. The walls are full of pictures of people who do not love me. The furniture is full of memories that make me sick. I walk through the rooms and I see ghosts everywhere. I see Diane in the kitchen. I see my children playing in the backyard. I see Tommy riding his bike on the driveway. I see all of it, and I feel nothing but a dull ache that never goes away. I go to the hardware store sometimes. I walk down the aisles and I look at the tools, and I remember teaching my son how to use a hammer. He was 7 years old. He had a little tool belt and a plastic hard hat. I thought he was going to be a builder. I thought he was going to be my best friend. But he grew up, and he became a stranger. He became a man who looked at me like I was an inconvenience. A man who sat in a courtroom and lied to a judge about his own father. I do not hate him. I do not have the energy for hate. I am just tired. I am so tired. I go to the coffee shop sometimes. I sit in the corner and I drink black coffee, and I watch young families walk by. I watch fathers holding their children's hands. I watch mothers pushing strollers. I watch grandparents laughing with their grandchildren. I see them, and I feel this sharp pain in my chest because I had all of that. I had all of it, and I lost it. I lost it because I trusted too much, and I saw too little, and I believed that love was enough.
But love is not enough. Love is not enough when the people you love are broken in ways you cannot fix. Love is not enough when they are using you. Love is not enough when they are waiting for you to die. I have thought about ending it. I have thought about it more than I want to admit. I have sat in my garage with my truck running and the door closed, and I have thought about just letting go, just drifting off to sleep and never waking up. But something always stops me. Stubbornness. The same stubbornness that kept me working nights for 37 years. The same stubbornness that kept me from asking for help. The same stubbornness that made me believe I could hold my family together with my bare hands. I am too stubborn to die. I am too stubborn to give them the satisfaction. I want to live. I want to live long enough to see them realize what they threw away. I want to live long enough to see Diane's new marriage fall apart. I want to live long enough to see my children come crawling back when they need something. And I want to slam the door in their faces. I want to look them in the eyes and I want to say no. I want to say you had your chance and you blew it. You made your choice and now you have to live with it. But that is revenge fantasy. That is the cheap version of a story I will never get to write. The real ending is quieter. The real ending is me sitting in my recliner on a cold October night with the television on mute and a half-empty glass of whiskey on the table beside me. The real ending is me looking at the phone and waiting for it to ring. Waiting for a call that never comes. Waiting for a voice that used to say, "I love you," to say it again. But the phone is silent. The house is silent. The whole world is silent. And I am alone. I am completely and utterly alone. And that is the worst part. Not the betrayal, not the stealing, not the lies, the loneliness, the hollow, empty, crushing loneliness of knowing that you gave everything to people who saw you as nothing, that you loved people who never loved you back, that you were a father and a husband and a provider, and none of it mattered. None of it mattered at all. I still have the screenshots. I still have the messages. I look at them sometimes. I look at the words Marcus sent to my wife. I look at the words she sent back. I look at the plans they made. The plans for a life that did not include me. And I wonder if I ever really existed to them, or if I was just a character in their story. A character they created and then killed off when he was no longer useful. I wonder if I was ever real. I wonder if the love I felt was real. I wonder if I am even real now. Sitting here in this empty house with my memories and my regrets and my unanswered prayers. I do not know the answer. I do not think I will ever know. So I keep living. I keep waking up.
I keep making coffee. I keep reading the newspaper. I keep mowing the lawn even though my back screams at me. I keep going to the hardware store and walking down the aisles. I keep sitting in the coffee shop and watching the young families. I keep breathing. I keep existing. I keep being the man who trusted too much and loved too hard and got nothing in return. That is my story. That is the whole goddamn story. And there is no happy ending. There is no redemption. There is no lesson. There is just the emptiness and the silence and the knowledge that the people you love the most are the ones who will hurt you the worst. And you will never see it coming, because you love them, because you trust them, because you think love is a shield. But love is not a shield. Love is a knife, and they will use it to cut out your heart every single time. I think about that Thanksgiving. I think about the gravy and the whispered phone call and the look in Diane's eyes. I think about the moment I could have asked, I could have said something, I could have stopped it all before it started. But I did not. I was too afraid. I was too afraid of the truth. And now the truth is all I have. The truth is the only thing that stays with me. The truth is that I was a fool, a weak, broken fool who thought love was enough. Love was never enough. Love was just the bait, and I swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker. And now I am here. A 71-year-old man in a house full of ghosts, with a phone that will never ring and a heart that will never heal. I am here, and I am telling you this because I need someone to know. I need someone to understand. I need someone to hear my story and remember it. Remember that betrayal does not come with a warning. Remember that the people you trust the most can destroy you without a second thought. Remember that love is not a guarantee. Love is a risk. And sometimes you lose. Sometimes you lose everything, and there is nothing you can do about it. Nothing at all. I finish my whiskey. I turn off the television. I go to bed. I lie down in the empty bed, and I stare at the ceiling, and I think about all the nights I slept next to Diane, all the nights I held her hand and told her I loved her, all the nights I believed she loved me back, and I close my eyes, and I wait for the morning, and I wait for another day of emptiness, and I wait for the end, whenever it comes, because it has to come. It always comes. And when it does, I will be ready. I will be ready because I have already lost everything. There is nothing left to lose. There is just the long, slow, quiet fall into nothing. And I am not afraid anymore. I am not afraid of anything. I am just tired. So tired. And I want to sleep. I want to sleep forever. But I will not.
I will keep waking up. I will keep breathing. I will keep being the old man in the empty house with the silent phone, because that is who I am now.
That is all I have left. That is my story. That is the whole goddamn story. And it is over. It is over, and there is no going back. No redemption, no forgiveness, no peace. Just the silence. Just the cold. Just the end. And I am okay with that. I have to be. Because there is nothing else. There is nothing else at all.